These images from the past may remind you of another time, perhaps your mother's kitchen, or perhaps your grandmother's. This treasure trove of 30s memorabilia is located in the kitchen of the History House Museum, located at the Los Altos Civic Center. Luckily, we don't have to use a lot of this heavy equipment anymore, but it's wonderful to see it so well preserved in such a special way at our city's museum. Hello, I'm Nan Geschke, your host for the Los Altos History Show. Tonight we have Liz Nyberg joining us. Welcome to the History Show, Liz.
Thank you, Nan.
As you could see from that roll-in that we had for this evening's show, we're going to be talking about History House. Liz has been active in the community for many years. She's been a Los Altos resident, and she's been publisher of the Homes and Land magazine. And she and her husband, Paul Nyberg, own and publish the Los Altos Town Crier. The Los Altos is the paper that Los Altos is most famous for, I guess. Liz is a founding member of the Los Altos Community Foundation, and she has been very active with the mediation program. I hear that you're still on the board of that. Is that correct, Liz?
That's correct.
Well, welcome to the History Show, Liz.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
Now, how did the city of Los Altos actually acquire the History House Museum? Because it really doesn't look like any of the other buildings at Civic Center.
Right. Let me give you a little bit of the history. In 1901, J. Gilbert Smith bought 5 acres of property on San Antonio Road. He planted an orchard and started constructing his own home, which he finished in 1905. He was a carpenter, and he became an orchardist. Then he added 10 more acres of property to his land, and he loved his apricot trees, and he had one of the most beautiful orchards in the whole area. In 1954, he married his wife, and they were, in 1931 he married his wife, and he was 55 years old and she was 54 years old, Margaret Hill, and neither of them had ever been married before.
So a little older couple then.
Right.
Yeah.
They never had children, and they decided that they would be willing to sell their property to the city for it to be used as a civic center in 1954, with the proviso that they would be able to live there until they died. He died in '66, she died in '73. So in 1974, the city bought the property and decided to have this become a history house. They formed the Historical Commission, and they opened the property in 1977 as a museum. In 1978, they started the History House Association, of which I am president this year. And the house has been open to the public ever since. In '92 to '94, they had to retrofit the house and earthquake-proof it, and so now it's reopened to the public. Oh. I'd like to also say that Jim Dozier was responsible in 1970 for all the trees still being there around the Civic Center building when they built City Hall. They were going to landscape and take down some of the trees, and Jim Dozier encouraged them not to do that, save the money, and keep the trees, because otherwise we would hardly have any apricot trees left in our city. they're practically all gone, all the orchards. And the condition is that as a tree dies, it has to be replaced now.
Interesting.
So we have not only a history house, we have a history orchard. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I know that historical preservation is one of the main goals of the commission, of which I'm a commissioner, and it also is a focus for the association because of the museum, which you do maintain. We just have had some recent news that Palo Alto has placed a 60-day moratorium on the demolition of all buildings that are more than 50 years old, and this is impacting their community. In fact, there's a little bit of an uproar there, because we have the preservationists on one side and we have the developers on another, and the homeowner is kind of caught in between. Do you see that kind of condition ever, folks, surfacing in Los Altos?
I would hope that we would not have to have a moratorium. I would like us to learn from Palo Alto, and we're watching them closely now to see what kind of an ordinance they write. San Jose has a good ordinance, and so does Los Gatos, so we should learn from that. But we have an inventory of older homes that we want preserved. And I know that, as you mentioned, the Historical Commission has been active with an inventory. Maybe you could tell us a little bit what you mean by the inventory. Are there different levels of homes with historic value?
Well, the inventory actually is a rather misleading word in a sense. The inventory is really a compilation of properties that are more than 50 years old and have some interest historically. And they're either the building itself, the architecture is important, or the person who lived in the home originally was important, the person who built it, for example. We have a home designated on University Avenue now, the Paul Schaup home on 500 University. And that home is interesting because it not only is a wonderful example of craftsman architecture, but it also is the home of the founding father of Los Altos, Paul Schaup. So it's a very important house, maybe the most important house in Los Altos. And that would be sort of at the top of the inventory. And then there are other homes that are also listed that are not quite at that level, but are maybe a good example of an architect's work, or they blend into the character of the neighborhood, and that is another whole level of designation. And the commission is actually going to be putting out a newsletter in the next few months, explaining, how we got to this, how we compile the inventory, and how we have designated each level. So the homeowners can be kind of looking forward to that in the next few months. So a lot more of this will become clear because there will be pictures as well as a lot of text.
Good.
So,
good.
Yeah. Now, Liz, tell me a little bit about the founding members of History House. Do you know anything about those people back in, I guess, the 70s who banded together, I guess, first as a commission, but then saw that there needed to be an auxiliary society?
Yes. Audrey Fisher was on the city council at the time in the early 70s, and she really had the vision for seeing the Gilbert Smith House as becoming our historical museum and the repository of the city artifacts and the photographs and things that we needed to keep. So we're really indebted to Audrey for her vision, and they formed the first historical commission, which was comprised of Lee Lynch. Lee Lynch is still very involved with History House. She's vice president, membership chair right now. Janet Rush was on that committee, and she's moved away. Kay Daly, who has since died. Fran Emery is still in the area. She's a school teacher. Jerry Kavanaugh was on the committee, and she's moved away. Kay Payne is still around and still somewhat involved. Pinky Whalen is our immediate past president of the association, so she's still very involved.
And also a commissioner.
And a commissioner, yes.
That's right. So
we have some very dedicated volunteers, and it's wonderful to have them, and they've been involved for 20 years.
It's amazing. It's amazing to see how far History House has come in terms of its development in 20 years. I guess 20 years can be a long lifespan, but in a museum's lifespan, it's rather short, and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of creativity, really, to come up with a concept that's going to, endure. Like our 30s farmhouse endures. It's a very interesting concept. We've talked a little bit about the commission and the association. I think maybe the viewers might want to have us delineate, what the responsibilities are for each and how the commission interrelates with the association. Can you start the ball rolling on that, Liz?
I view the Historical Commission as being the umbrella over the
correct.
History House Association. And we tell the Historical Commission everything that we're doing. We run any new plan by them. They always seem to approve it. I guess they agree with what we're doing. But they really are appointed by the city government, and so they report to the city government, and it's important for them to watch over our association and make sure we're on track.
Good. Yes, and that's the commission actually really it has oversight for the association and works in conjunction with the association. For example, when the building was seismically upgraded a few years ago, the commission had to approve the plans, and any subsequent, renovations or changes in History House usually has to go by the commissioners, and usually it's there is approval, but it's a formality that we've set in place so that the two, both the commission and the association, are working in tandem and in harmony with one another. We also have a lot of co-sponsored project. We have co-sponsored projects. We have the third grade tour, which the commission doesn't sponsor, but really oversees and approves, and the association really implements that tour for the public school children.
Last May, we had 600 third grade students come through History House.
Isn't that amazing?
On a docent tour.
I know.
So that's part of our educational package.
It's really one of the most wonderful events every year.
And we want to expand that. Apparently the 6th grade class has a history unit that we could become involved with.
Good. Yeah, and then we also do the essay contest together. The commission sponsors it, but the education committee of the association actually comes up with the theme every year, and they've come up with the theme for this year, for example. And the essay contest is for all the 3rd to 6th grade students in the city of Los Altos, and most of the schools do participate. And there were over 800 entries last year. So it is really citywide, and it's looked forward to by both the teachers and the children every year. Liz, why would anyone want to belong to the History House Association? Are there any benefits that you can, tell our viewers about?
Yes, there are benefits. I think probably the first overriding reason that people belong is that they do want to preserve the history that we have, and they're willing to pay our dues, which are rather nominal, but they support the whole idea of preserving our history. I think East Coasters must laugh, those who come from Boston and Alexandria, Virginia, and Williamsburg, to see that we have a 1905 historical house, but that's what we have, and fortunately we've preserved that. 100 years from now, if we hadn't saved that, then it would have been really unfortunate. Yeah. We have a wonderful crab feed every year. This is one of our benefits to the membership. It's a fundraiser, silent auction, live auction, and all the crab you can eat. And
it's delicious, by the way.
Yes. We have Americana Antique Show every June. There's another antique show in October. The first one is held on the grounds. We have developed a very nice historic walking tour brochure. It's self-conducted. You can pick this up at History House tour the downtown buildings that are historic, and then go off into the University Orange Avenue area and see the residential homes there that are listed in this. And we have our other brochure.
And that is self-guided?
Self-guided. You can pick that up at any time and go on your own.
Where can people pick that up?
Really at History House.
History House?
And I'm
I
not
thought they had that at the Chamber too at one time, but
They
maybe not.
probably have it at the Chamber.
Great.
We should probably have it at the Los Altos Town Crier.
True.
More places.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. The second brochure you were going to?
This is the History House Museum brochure. And can be mailed to people. We find a lot of the people who visit our house are from out of the area or even out of the country, and they're very interested in our history, young as it might be. We have had an Annie Fitz reception in the home. Annie Fitz painted primitive paintings of her childhood in Los Altos. We have a wonderful collection that she donated to History House.
Oh, it is wonderful, I know.
But there's so many paintings, we can't have them all up on the walls at any one time. We're really kind of bursting at the seams now with our archives.
So I think you have a project planned to help increase that space.
We do.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I know
Yes.
that's the most exciting news coming from History House these days.
Yes. Bob and Marion Grimm are probably the driving force behind construction of a new building. And this is going to be a part of the History House property. It's right behind History House. Maybe we'll call it the History Barn, and that's part of the historical complex. In the barn, which is shaped like a barn, and Goodwin Steinberg has drawn up the plans.
And I think the camera's going to pick up the rendering, so that the viewers can get an idea of what what the History Barn is going to look like.
It's kind of a California barn, even though the Gilbert Smiths did not have a barn on the property. It makes the best kind of a design for an extension to our building. Housed in that will be a temporary exhibit hall of 1,200 square feet. Then there'll be a permanent hall upstairs, permanent exhibit. There will be a kitchen, so you could have catered events, and it would be available for weddings and other kind of community events. And then we'll have a gift shop. Then there's a full basement in which we will have a computer room available for the public to use and access the resources that we have at History House. There will be a room set up for the preservation of our materials, where we can put them in acid-free material or frame them or whatever.
Is there any time frame in terms of when this is going to be built?
The big hope,
I would have to ask that question.
Yes, you would. The big hope is that it would open in 1999.
Oh.
Just before the turn of the century. So we'll see.
Oh, that's really exciting.
Yes. We'll have to have a big fundraising campaign beforehand. We are actually well on our way with fundraising already. We haven't done any kind of a community push yet. We're not quite ready for that, but when we do, the community will learn about it.
So there has been some funds raised then?
Yes, already. Donations have come in.
That's
and
wonderful.
We've had a matching grant from the Lucille and David Packard Foundation. So that will help.
That's wonderful. Now, Liz, you're president of the History House Association this year. What is going to be your focus, or what are your personal goals for your term in office? I know it's a 2-year term?
It's a 1-year term.
Oh, 1-year term. Your term. Okay.
Most of them tend to do 2. Who knows? But my personal goal would be to increase the traffic through History House Museum. It's a hidden treasure, and it's just wonderful. And one of the wonderful byproducts of the children coming through is so often then they bring their parents. But too many people in Los Altos don't even know we have a History House Museum. It's located right behind the library in the Civic Center, easy to find. Right now, access is free, and it's on Wednesdays and Saturday afternoons, and it's open from basically 1 to 4. Some days it's 12 to 5. And we encourage people to come. And I'd like to just really have more exciting exhibits and change more often, and I think that will draw people to come.
Absolutely.
Right now we have an aerial photography exhibit of the Los Altos area, and it's very exciting. It's great to see those old photos.
It is.
And what
it is.
wasn't there before.
Well, you know, you gave me a perfect lead-in, Liz. We this past weekend went out to History House and taped 2 children going through the museum for the first time, and we're going to be sharing that with our viewers tonight. But before we roll that tape, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been very informative, and I think the viewers will really enjoy looking at this next segment, so keep tuned. Let's roll that tape. We're here at History House on a lovely fall day. You can see the wonderful American flag at the front door welcoming visitors. The children on the tour today with Gloria Bears are going to be seeing not only the house, but also the apricot drying shed and the tank house and some of the other outbuildings around History House. Let's join Gloria now with the 2 local Los Altos children as Gloria explains to them some of the features of this 1930s kitchen.
This is the refrigerator, sure. And inside, they kept things that they wanted to keep cool. And when I was a little girl, the Iceman came and brought a big block of ice and put in here. Up here is where they made the ice. Does this look familiar to you?
Yeah.
Yeah? Those were the little ice cubes.
People still use those.
Yes, that's right. Good thinking. Good thinking.
Put water in them and then put them in the freezer or whatever.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so this was the refrigerator. Now, do you recognize any of these things? Do you know what this is?
Maybe, is it a grinder?
Good, good. What do you suppose they put in there?
Like, maybe a grind up, maybe meat or something.
Correct, absolutely. Do you recognize anything else?
One mixing right there.
This was the old mixer.
Okay.
Here, Sienna. Move it around, honey. There, that's how they did it. You have to hold it up here. That's right. Kind of hard to move, isn't it? Take a long time, wouldn't it?
It's rusty.
Is it a little rusty?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a pastry blender. And what they do is they blend this. Now, I still have one of these. Have you seen one of these at all?
Yeah, I've seen those
Yeah?
once.
Okay. Yeah, this is a pastry blender, and that they'd mix with. And here is, do you recognize this?
Yeah, for like
Yeah, a rolling pin, good. You recognize this?
cookie cutter.
Cookie cutters, right. Have you made a lot of cookies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I made some for Halloween.
Oh, good. And what do you suppose this is?
Maybe see like you could shred cheese in it or something.
Oh, well, this one, cheese shredder looks like this, but this one is a flour sifter. And they'd put the flour in here and sift it like this. Can you see the little, in the inside, you can see how it sifts the flour. Okay? And look at this.
Little measuring cup.
Oh, yes. This is oleomargarine. Now, this kind of margarine you've never seen before because yours comes in a bucket. But when I was a little girl, it came in these cubes.
Is it butter?
Yeah, it's a substitute for butter. It's called oleo. But it was white when I was a little girl. And you got it in this package, and it came with a little yellow capsule. And you broke the capsule, and then you mixed it all together with your hands in order to make it yellow. And now it just comes yellow. Do you ever have oleo? Oleo margarine?
Didn't know. I just have plain.
Let's go over to the sink and look at some things, okay? First of all, look what they did. They have a skirt over the sink so that they could cover up things, because the sink is just kind of a shelf like this, and they have a place where they can have some storage. And here is the sink. Look at this. The sink counter is made of what?
Wood.
Wood, right, and that's different. Look at all the spices. Do you recognize any?
I know garlic salt and I know white pepper.
Good, white pepper, and you mentioned?
Mint.
Mint. And you don't have it, yeah, you don't have it in a box. You have it in your backyard now, don't you?
And there's baking soda.
And there's baking soda, right. And now, over here, the table is all set for breakfast. And if you'll notice, this is how the milk came. They didn't have a cow outside, and they didn't have a store to go to. So they had the milkman, and he came and delivered big quarts of milk and these small little creams. And when you got your milk, the cream sometimes was on the top, and you'd have to shake it and to mix the two. Do you know what this is? This is really fun. Can you guess? No? This is a toaster. And they'd put the toast here, and then they'd close it, and then they'd turn it on. See, it is electric. Now let's go over and take a look at the stove, okay? Have you ever seen one like this? No? I sure haven't either. Now, I would suspect that my mom began cooking like this, but let's look and see. This is a gas stove. See, there's no electricity here. So this is a gas stove, and you have to look at the burners. And here's the turn on, and here's where they turned them on. And if you open these up, you will see this is where they stored, and this is, I believe, the broiler.
We're here in the kitchen of History House, and I just wanted to thank you, Gloria, very much for participating in our video this afternoon.
You're welcome.
And also to Sienna
Kramer.
and Max.
And Min.
Good. And thank you so much, children, for helping us with our video this afternoon. Do you go to school?
Yes.
Where do you go to school?
Oak School.
Oak School. And what grade are you in?
2nd grade.
2nd grade. And who is your teacher?
Miss Gilliard.
Miss Gilliard. Great.
Miss Gilliard.
Gilliard. Okay. Thanks very much. And Max, what school do you go to?
I go to Santa Rita.
Santa Rita. And what grade are you in?
3rd.
3rd grade. Well, let's all say goodbye now, and I hope that you enjoyed our tour of History House, especially with these children who've toured it for the first time. I hope you are able to bring your own families, your children and grandchildren. It's a great way to spend a weekend afternoon. And History House is open from 12 to 4 on Saturdays, so it's a good place to come, especially as we approach the winter and there's some rain. So it's a good place to bring the children. So thanks for watching the Los Altos History Show, and we'll see you next time.